Leo, listen closely, because this is not just another horoscope. Something serious is unfolding inside your home this week, and you need to be ready to face it. No, I'm not talking about death in the physical sense but a symbolic one. The end of something that once felt solid. Maybe it's a relationship, a belief, a habit, a role you've been holding onto for too long. What's crumbling isn't random. It's a divine nudge to release what no longer serves you, even if it once felt like home. If you've been feeling uneasy lately, like the walls are closing in or the air around you has shifted, you're not imagining it. That tension, that feeling that something is off in your inner circle or space, that's your intuition doing its job. You're not paranoid. You're being prepared. There's a reason this message found you today. And no, it's not a coincidence. When three cards like the Tower, Death, and Three of Swords fall together, especially around matters of home and emotional safety, it's not just a spread. It's a revelation. It's Spirit putting a mirror in your hand and saying, look. It's time. This week between the 25th and the 30th truths will rise. And not the kind you can brush off. We're talking about uncomfortable realizations, betrayals that sting, and secrets that might shake your core. But here's the thing, it's all happening for you, not to you. There's a bigger story here. Astrologically, Pluto is making a heavy square to the moon near your house of roots, family, and private life. Saturn is enforcing karmic lessons that can no longer be delayed. And the full moon on the 27th? It's lighting up everything that's been hidden behind closed doors inside you and around you. Let me be clear. What's ending right now was never meant to last forever. It might have provided structure or comfort in the past, but that structure has cracks. Deep ones. And the longer you pretend not to see them, the harder the collapse will hit. So this is your turning point. You can either resist the shift and keep patching up something broken, or you can let the old fall away and finally step into the version of you that's been waiting on the other side of the storm. If you've ever prayed for clarity, this is it. If you've asked for a breakthrough, don't be surprised that it's coming through breakdown. But you don't have to go through it alone. You're here, now, in this space with me. That matters. That's real. And if this message is already stirring something inside you, if you feel like your chest is tightening or your heart's beating just a little faster, I want you to ground yourself and do one simple thing for me. Comment below and say, I'm ready to see the truth. Not for me, but for you. It's a declaration. A commitment to your own awakening. A small act that begins to shift energy in a big way. Also, hit like if you feel that this video found you at exactly the right moment. Because maybe just maybe it did. Now, before we move forward, let me take a moment to thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for being here. Your time, your presence, your energy's what fuels this space. Every like, every comment, every share, and every subscribe deepens our connection and helps bring more of these soul-aligned messages to life. And Leo, you'll want to stay with me until the very last moment of today's reading, because what the universe is about to reveal next is beyond what you expect. It's raw. It's real. And it just might change everything. So, are you ready to find out what's truly happening behind the scenes? Let's go deeper. Sometimes, Leo, the very place that once felt safest becomes the space where your greatest awakening begins. And it doesn't always start with clarity or light, it often starts with something breaking. That's what this moment is. A crack. A shift. A quiet but powerful unraveling of something in your home, your relationships, or your inner circle that can no longer stay hidden. You may not have the full picture yet, but deep down, you felt it. Something's off. Something's changing. And it's not just around you, it's also within you. The cards that revealed themselves, the Tower, Death, and the Three of Swords, are not here to scare you. They're here to strip away what you've outgrown, even if you loved it. Even if you clung to it with everything you had. These aren't just symbols on paper. They're mirrors. And what they're reflecting is a truth you've been trying not to face. Something in your life, perhaps right in the center of your home, has reached the end of its cycle. The Tower is not gentle. It's not subtle. It's the lightning strike you didn't see coming, but maybe, if you're honest, you sensed it in your bones. It comes when a structure you once trusted, an idea, a role, a dynamic, a home, even a person, has been built on shaky ground for far too long. The universe doesn't destroy for the sake of chaos. It clears space for something more aligned. But it starts with rubble. And rubble is messy. Uncomfortable. Loud. Then comes death. Not literal death, but death as a metaphor for release. It's the shedding of skin, the falling of leaves before the winter. It's where you stop trying to resuscitate what's already gone. What feels like loss is often preparation. Because life, like nature, works in seasons. And sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is admit that a season has ended. You don't have to understand it all now. You just have to stop pretending that nothing's changed. And finally, the Three of Swords, the ache of truth, the sting of betrayal, or the piercing realization that what you hoped for is no longer real. It hurts. There's no denying that. But pain doesn't come to punish. It comes to reveal. To remind you that your heart still feels. That you still care. That what breaks you can also remake you, if you let it. So what does this mean for you, practically? It may mean difficult conversations within your household. A confrontation with long-avoided issues. A relationship that's shown signs of wear and tear finally reaching its breaking point. It may even be something less, visibly a shift in the emotional tone of your home, a secret revealed, or a spiritual misalignment you can no longer ignore. But here's the gift in all of this: clarity. When the tower falls, there are no more illusions. When death visits, it makes space for life. When sorrow shows up, it leaves behind wisdom if you're willing to feel it all the way through. Right now, you don't need to fix everything. You don't need to make it make sense. What you need is presence. Honesty. The willingness to sit in the truth without running. Put your hand on your chest, breathe deeply, and ask yourself, what am I still holding on to that's already ended? Is it a person? A version of yourself? An outdated story about what family or home should be? Let this be your first act of release. And if it feels right to you, I invite you to comment below and simply write, I am releasing to receive what's truly meant for me. That one sentence can begin to shift your entire frequency. It's not magic, it's alignment. And alignment is where your healing begins. Change doesn't always start with clarity. Sometimes, it starts with letting go. And Leo, you don't need to carry it all anymore. You just need to be willing to drop what no longer holds truth. Something far more real is waiting to rise in its place. You knew something felt off, Leo. Maybe you didn't have proof, maybe nothing looked different on the surface, but your energy picked it up anyway. That strange silence in the room, the offhand comment that lingered a little too long, the sense that someone wasn't telling the whole story. This isn't about suspicion. This is about intuition. And now, the truth is ready to come out. When the Seven of Swords shows up next to the Justice card, it's not just hinting, it's warning. Someone hasn't been honest with you. There may be a conversation, a message, or even a subtle action that finally exposes it. You'll see it clearly, and it won't be the kind of thing you can unsee. For some, it's about broken promises around money, property, or shared responsibilities. For others, it might be a long-standing trust quietly cracking open. And while it might feel like a betrayal, it's also an opportunity, because clarity is a gift, even when it arrives wrapped in pain. And here's where it hits hardest. The Five of Cups doesn't just signal disappointment, it reflects your own reflection in that moment. That quiet, aching question we've all asked at some point: how didn't I see it? That sense of guilt for trusting too much or loving too purely. But I'm here to tell you something that most people forget in moments like this: you didn't do anything wrong by having faith. You didn't mess up by choosing to believe in someone. What's happening now isn't punishment. It's a reveal. And it's meant to help you see what you need to release so that you can finally be free. In numerology, the number 5 represents challenge, but it also represents breakthrough. It's the number of motion, of testing boundaries so they can finally be redefined. And yes, this might feel like chaos right now. But it's sacred chaos. You're not falling apart or breaking open. There's a difference. This is where you have to be kind to yourself. You're not weak for hurting. You're human. Let yourself feel it. Write down what you're experiencing, not to relive the pain, but to understand it. And more importantly, so that the pain doesn't quietly settle somewhere in your body or spirit and stay there unspoken. This is where self-responsibility and self-compassion meet. You don't have to fix everything overnight. But you do have to allow yourself space to breathe, grieve, and reset. Don't rush to make decisions right after this comes to light. Emotions run high when truths come out, especially when trust is involved. For the next few days, especially 3 days after the moment of truth, focus on grounding practices. Light a white candle. Burn some incense if that's your thing. Or just sit in silence and let your nervous system calm itself down. Don't force clarity. Let it come. You are not meant to stay in pain. But you are meant to feel it just enough to know what matters to you now. Pain, when faced honestly, always clears the way for deeper integrity. If this is resonating, if you know that some part of you has been quietly preparing for this shift, leave a comment below and write, "I allow myself to feel, but I won't stay in the pain." Because saying that out loud, even digitally, signals to your system that you're choosing to move forward. That you're strong enough to hold truth and still keep your heart open. Truth doesn't destroy you, Leo. It reshapes you. And the moment you stop fearing it is the moment you finally step into who you really are. Keep going. You're not alone in this. You're being guided through. It doesn't take weeks. It doesn't take months. Sometimes, life shifts in a single breath. Leo, you're not entering a slow seasonnerie standing at the mouth of a storm. And not the kind that builds quietly in the distance. This one is fast. It's sharp. It comes with no warning, like lightning cracking across a sky that looked perfectly calm seconds before. This is what the energy between the 25th and 30th feels like. It's the Eight of Wands and the Wheel of Fortune working in tandem, one bringing speed, the other bringing irreversible change. You're not being asked to brace for impact in the far future. The message is clear, the shift is already in motion. What you feel rising inside you is real. And what's coming? It won't wait for you to be ready. The astrology supports this. The full moon illuminates your fourth house, the area of your chart that governs home, family, emotional safety, and deep-rooted identity. That means anything that's been hiding in the dark corners of your personal life is about to be exposed in the light. And when the Wheel of Fortune shows up during this kind of lunar spotlight, it's not a nudge, it's a turn. A realignment. A moment that cuts through the noise and rearranges the pieces, whether or not you think you're prepared. And here's the thing, being prepared isn't the point. No one's ever really ready for the rug to be pulled out from under them. But sometimes the rug is exactly what's kept you stuck. You're not being punished. You're being rerouted. And yes, it might feel like chaos, but chaos has always been the birthplace of clarity. Think of the wheel like a carousel that suddenly starts spinning faster than you expected. You have two choices: tighten your grip and panic, or release your resistance and let it carry you forward. One is fear. The other is trust. And right now, you're being asked to trust not in the world around you, but in the strength of the foundation you've built within. This is not the time to control every variable. It's the time to come back to center. That means grounding yourself physically and energetically. Warm water helps the body stay present. Magnesium-rich foods like pumpkin, almonds, and bananas stabilize the nervous system. Simple choices, but powerful ones. Because when the world moves fast, your nervous system doesn't need more caffeine, it needs care. It needs stillness inside the motion. You can also make a conscious energetic choice. Sit down and write 3 things you're ready to let go of. Not just things that feel bad, but things that feel outdated. Habits, beliefs, emotional loops, people, roles you've outgrown. Write them down, not because writing will fix everything, but because naming something gives you the power to release it. This is how you shift from reaction to intention. From feeling lost to feeling in motion with purpose. What matters most now is how you show up in the face of rapid change. Do you cling to the past? Or do you open to what's being offered through the discomfort? And if you're here reading this, breathing a little deeper, blinking a little slower, that's already your sign. You're not frozen. You're aware. That's the beginning of movement. If this resonates with you, take a moment to comment, "I stay centered in the storm." It's not just a phrase, it's a declaration. You're choosing to anchor into your power when the external feels uncertain. You're telling your system, your spirit, your world, "I may not control the storm, but I won't let it pull me under." Leo, storms don't just tear things down. They clear the air. And what rises after is often more honest, more beautiful, and more aligned than anything that came before. Keep your heart open. Stay awake. And remember, even in fast forward, you get to choose how you move. When something breaks, Leo, it's easy to believe that all is lost. But here's the part most people don't talk about enough. After the dust settles, after the tears dry and the ache softens, something new begins to grow quietly, but undeniably. And not just anything. Something real. Something that feels more aligned than anything that came before it. You've made it through the shaking ground. You've stood face to face with what collapsed. Now, as you begin to breathe again, the energy begins to shift. This part of your journey is not about bracing anymore. It's about rebuilding, but this time, on your terms. And that's where the light begins to return. The Ace of Pentacles is that first glimmer. It shows up when the universe is offering you something tangible, something solid, whether it's a new job, a surprising financial opportunity, or a moment of clarity about your true purpose. This isn't fantasy. This is rooted energy. This is soil that's finally ready for you to plant something meaningful in it. But there's a catch: this gift only sticks if your hands are free. If you're still clinging to the ashes of what was, you might miss what's right in front of you. That's where trust comes in. Not blind faith, but the quiet inner knowing that says, if I made it through that, I can receive what's next. This is the part where the law of attraction becomes less about wishing and more about alignment. The more you let go of old attachments, the more space you create for the good that's meant for you. You're not begging the universe to bring you better. You're becoming the version of yourself who naturally attracts it. And you won't be doing it alone. The Two of Cups speaks of connection, not just romance, but sacred companionship in its truest form. This could be a new relationship built on mutual respect and real presence. It could be a business partnership with shared values. Or maybe, most powerfully, it's a reunion with yourself. A moment when you realize you've come home to your own heart after a long season of survival. That kind of healing relationship can shift everything. The Three of Pentacles follows with a clear message. Now is the time to build, but not with haste. Take your time. Lay the bricks one by one. Call in people who truly support your growth and aren't just there for the spotlight. This is your opportunity to create a structure that feels both grounded and sacred. Work with intention. Speak your needs. Receive help without shame. You don't need to do everything alone. And when the Four of Wands appears, it signals a turning point. Not just recovery but celebration. Not just peace but a sense of belonging. Imagine stepping into a space, maybe literal, maybe emotional, where you feel like you've finally arrived. This isn't about returning to how things were. It's about finally feeling safe in the new version of your life. Now, if we're being practical, because healing also includes wisdom, this is not the week to rush into big financial decisions. Avoid signing contracts or committing to major expenses, especially around the 25th or 27th, when emotional energy may cloud judgment. Wait until after the 30th, when clarity returns. In the meantime, keep your body grounded. Gentle yoga, walking with intention, a few minutes of slow breathing, they all help your nervous system catch up with your spirit. And if you're feeling that opening in your chest as you read this, that sense of maybe something beautiful is on its way, then don't ignore it. That's not false hope. That's intuition. That's readiness. Comment below, I open my heart to receive what's meant for me. Because saying it out loud begins the shift. You've walked through the fire, Leo. This is the beginning of your return. And this time, you're not coming back to what you knew, you're stepping into something better. Something built for the version of you who's finally ready to receive. After everything you've been through, Leo, this is where the real work begins, not the exhausting kind, but the kind that reminds you who you truly are. What the cards are revealing now isn't just about what's coming next. It's about who you get to be when you stop living like everything is out of your control. You're not just picking up pieces anymore. You're designing something new, and this time, it's on your terms. The magician isn't some mysterious figure outside of you. It's a reflection of your potential. Of what you already carry but haven't fully used. The tools have always been on the table: your voice, your passion, your wisdom, your ability to create impact. But when you've spent a long time reacting to chaos or surviving what others brought into your life, it's easy to forget that you can shape your own experience. The magician reminds you that you don't have to wait for someone to tell you it's time. You get to declare it for yourself. The truth is, you've already survived so much. And that means you already know how strong you are. Take a moment. Write down 3 things you've overcome. Not just to pat yourself on the back, but to remind yourself of your resilience. Then write 3 things you know you're good at, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because it's time to reclaim the parts of yourself that got dimmed while you were just trying to make it through. You're not a victim of this moment. You're the one who gets to respond to it differently. The 9 of Cups speaks to something deeper than wish fulfillment. It's not about getting what you think you want, it's about discovering what you truly need. And sometimes, it takes losing the things you once clung to in order to realize they weren't aligned with the life your soul actually wanted. This card says, you will get your heart's desire, but only after your heart becomes honest with itself. And that honesty, Leo, is your power. Still, even as you step into your light, distractions will come. The 7 of Cups is your gentle warning. Not everything that glitters is gold. Not every opportunity that shows up is meant for you. Some will feel tempting, even urgent. Some will sound like the easy fix, the fast track, the soothing promise. But you know better now. You've earned the right to pause. To ask questions. To trust your gut over the hype. The High Priestess confirms that your inner voice is louder than ever, even if the world around you gets noisy. That quiet knowing you feel? That sense of, something's off, or, this is the one. That's not imagination, it's guidance. You're more connected to your truth now than you've been in a long time. But connection requires space. Space to listen. Space to not rush. Trust it. And when in doubt, ground yourself in simplicity. Wear warm, earthy colors like golden yellow or soft terracotta shades that connect you to your center. Light a candle, take 3 slow breaths, and ask, what does my soul need right now? The answers may not be immediate, but they will come. If this is speaking to you, if even part of you feels seen, I invite you to say it aloud in your own space or here below in the comments. I choose to be the creator. Or, I trust my intuition. Whichever resonates more. Because once you say it, you'll start to live it. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been, before the fear, before the distractions, before you were told you had to wait for permission. Now you know better. Now you choose. And that choice, Leo, changes everything. You've just walked through something most people don't even know how to name, Leo. A spiritual death. Not an end, but a deep shedding off illusions, of old identities, of truths that were never really true. This wasn't here to punish you. It was here to bring you back to yourself. Stronger. Clearer. Ready. And I want you to take a moment, right now, to recognize what that means. You are no longer who you were before this. And this is not just another ending, it's the beginning of a completely different chapter. The kind of chapter you don't just survive. You live. You lead. You create. There's something quietly powerful about who you're becoming. You're not grasping for answers anymore. You're learning how to ask better questions. You're not begging for peace, you're rebuilding it. You're not wondering who you need to be for others, you're remembering who you've always been at your core. And yes, this has taken something from you. Maybe trust. Maybe time. Maybe a part of your innocence. But what it's giving you is worth far more: discernment, depth, dignity. The capacity to stand in a room with your full truth and not shrink. That is sacred. That is rare. And that is yours now. So take a breath and ask yourself honestly, what kind of life do you want to rebuild from here? Who are you when you're not carrying someone else's expectations? What would it mean to live fully in your own energy, on your own terms, with your own timing? Because that's what's on the other side of all this. A life that doesn't just look good but feels aligned. Rooted. Real. And this time, you won't have to beg for love, or betray yourself to stay, or shrink so someone else can feel safe. You've outgrown that. And it's okay. It's more than okay, it's necessary. As I close this message, I want you to remember something simple but profound. When one door closes in pain, the next opens in truth. That truth may not be soft, but it will be solid. And it will set you free. So here's my blessing for you, Leo. May you walk through the truth with clear eyes, an open heart, and a grounded step. May your past never define you, and may your future rise from everything you've finally released. If this message spoke to your soul in any way, leave a comment below and write, "I step through the new doorway." That's your signal to the universe that you're ready to receive what's waiting. Hit like if you feel seen in these words. And don't forget to subscribe to Eternal Mindfulness, where I'll be posting more energy protection and manifestation rituals designed just for Leo in the coming days. And most importantly, share this with a Leo you care about. Because someone out there needs this reminder as much as you did. Maybe more. Let's keep showing up for each other. Remember, you're not who you were. And this is not the end. This is where it all begins.